Hi, I'm Greg Scott, and I'm recording this on Wednesday, December 30th, 2020. And a few things have changed in the cybersecurity world just recently, and it's time for an updated version of this talk. This is about what we're up against and why we should care and what we can do about it. Let's just get right to the screen sharing and the slides because we've got a lot to cover and only a little time to cover it. Let's go here, and let's start. So what we're up against, why we need to care, and what we can do about it. There you go. We'll just get into it. I was at a Barnes & Noble store in downtown Minneapolis, near where I live, back in 2015, and I was pitching my first book to the store clerk, Bullseye Breach: Anatomy of an Electronic Break-In. Bullseye Breach is it's a cool story. It's about how a Minneapolis retailer named Bullseye Stores loses 40 million customer credit card numbers to some Russians. So I was doing my pitch in the bookstore and not getting very far, and a lady over on the other corner was watching me, and she eventually walked over and she said, "Hi, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." And then she said, "It's just a shame that we're sitting ducks for these kind of cyber attacks. It's a shame there's nothing we can do about it." I don't know if she was egging me on or what, but I expressed an opinion forcefully with feeling. I pounded the table and waved my arms around. I said, "That's hogwash. There's all kinds of stuff we can do about it when we decide we want to do about it." And I went on and on for a while and got louder and louder. And then I noticed everybody in the whole store was quiet and just kind of staring at me. And so I stopped. And she smiled and she said, "I can see you're passionate about this topic." I said, "Yes, I am." So I had a book sample in my hand, and she put two $20 bills in my other hand, and she said, "I want that book right now." And I said, "Well, it doesn't cost that much. It's just one of those $20 bills is fine." She said, "No, it's worth it to me. Here's two $20 bills. I want that book right now." I thanked her for her time. That was a great day in the life of a novel author. I wish for more days like that. One of the messages I want to leave you with is we can do something about the cyber attacks plaguing us today when we decide we want to. So I'm going to give you some hints about that. But first, before I give you tips, I'm going to give you some statistics. And this first one is a biggie. A cyber attack happens once every 39 seconds. The people who measured that plugged a computer into the internet and just counted the number of probes over a day. 2,244 on average, divided by 24 hours, it comes to about every 39 seconds on average. I'm going to show you a demonstration in a few seconds that I think that 39 seconds is an order of magnitude off. I think it's averaging more like every 4 or 5 seconds. Here's some more statistics. Look at the bottom one. Between $57 billion and $109 billion per year flush down the toilet because of malicious cyber activity, and 78% of organizations are victims. That floors me. That floors me. Now let's do our demo here. Let's go right here, and this is my firewall, and it's connected to the internet. And let's just look and see. Well, there you go. Bam, right away. Let's just look and see about some of the probes coming in from around the world. And it doesn't take very long to see them. Every few seconds, another one blips in. And there you go. Just a few seconds, 5 or 10 or something. I didn't count, but they come in every couple seconds. Let's pick one at random here, and let's just see where it came from. Let's look at this one. Let's find an IP address if we can find it. Right, source. Oh, here we go. Source is 52.2. Let's see where that lives. Who is that? And let's see where it came from. No, that's from from inside Microsoft. That's probably an Azure, a system inside Microsoft Azure somewhere that came out, that probed me. That's somebody probably compromised a server someplace, and that system tried to probe. Looked like it probed for an FTP server. Look at that, inbound FTP. There, yep, that one's looking. That's a special thing that I have probing for FTP servers. Let's look at another one here, just quick. Let's look at this one right here. Who is, and doom and boom. Let's see where that came from. Dmitry Panchenko. in Moscow, Russian Federation. I should feel honored. The Russians tried to penetrate me. How how wonderful. This happens all the time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Here's a slide where I captured it in case when I present this without the ability to do demos. All right, enough statistics and numbers. Give me real stories. I need real stories. I need meat. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you. First up is a ransomware attack on a hospital in Dusseldorf, Germany. What's a ransomware attack? Ransomware is when somebody gets inside your network, and there's a variety of ways people can get inside. The most common is with phishing, P-H-I-S-H, phishing. I send you a tainted email, and I convince you to click on an attachment, and you run an evil program, and now I own your network. That's a phishing attack. And so somebody got inside this hospital's network and scrambled all their files, and then left a note that said, if you want to unscramble the files, pay some Bitcoin money to this Bitcoin address. That's a ransomware attack. That's another form of a ransomware attack is I'll steal a bunch of data from you, and then I'll blackmail you into sending me money in order for me to return that data or destroy it. and you have to trust that I really will destroy it, because after all, blackmailers are trustworthy, right? Blackmailers are trustworthy. Well, anyway, someone had scrambled all the files in this hospital. They couldn't operate. So the hospital couldn't operate. You know where this story is going. A patient tried to check in. They couldn't accept the patient. They sent the patient to another hospital on the other side, somewhere else, and that patient died. This is serious business, folks. This kind of stuff can kill people. And so here's another one. This is a supply chain attack called NotPetya. It's from 2017, and you'd think it's ancient history, and it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. So this happened in 2017, and what's a supply chain attack? Think of metaphorically. We've all seen the spy movies where people sit in a room, where the good guys sit in a room, and they make decisions about how they're going to save the world from destruction, right? We've all seen that spy movie. But what the good guys don't know is that the room is bugged, and bad guys are listening in on what the good guys are planning. That gives the bad guys an advantage. Great. If I'm a bad guy, bugging one room isn't good enough. I want to bug every good guy room around the world. How would I do it? How would I bug every good guy room around the world and listen in on all those conversations? Well, there's a couple ways. One way is I could send teams into every single room and plant bugs, but the understated fashion, that's labor intensive. It's just not practical to physically get inside every room and do that. So what we do is we take over the light bulb factory. So I take over the light bulb factory and I plant bugs in every light bulb that I produce. And then when the good guys change their light bulbs, I'm inside those rooms. That's a supply chain attack. Don't attack your target directly. Attack a supplier to your target and find a way to turn those supplies into a weapon. That's a supply chain attack. So in 2017, sorry about my cough. In 2017, this Ukrainian software company named MEDocs was the light bulb factory, and that software company makes an accounting package. Whenever anybody, that was a popular accounting package in Ukraine. Whenever their customers updated their software, they invited this evil software into their network, and the payload, the evil software, destroyed everything that it could find. That's the long and the short of it. Well, a company named Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K, Maersk, had a computer inside Ukraine running this MEDocs software. Maersk is the biggest global shipping company in the whole world. Something like 20% of the world shipping traffic runs on Maersk. It's a huge company. And Maersk didn't do a good job of cybersecurity, and you can read some of the stories about it in the links I've posted. Maersk did a poor job of security, and this malicious software destroyed all their servers, including their Windows domain controllers. And the only thing that saved Maersk from oblivion was a power failure in Africa. in Ghana, Africa. And that left that single one surviving domain controller was there. Somebody had to pick that hard drive up, bring it on an airplane, and fly it to Nigeria. And then somebody from Europe flew to Nigeria, picked up the hard drive, and brought it back to Europe. That's how Maersk recovered themselves. They were down for like 2 weeks because of this malicious software, because of this supply chain attack in 2017. You'd think that we would learn, but we didn't. The Russians learned, the good guys didn't learn. That leads to the SolarWinds attack in 2020. And that's partly why I'm recording this right now in December of 2020, because this attack is in front of us right now. SolarWinds makes network management software that some of the biggest and most influential organizations in the world use to help manage their networks. SolarWinds customers include every division of the U.S. military, lots of U.S. government departments, most of the big internet service providers, and thousands of companies around the world. They updated their SolarWinds Orion package in March of 2020, and from March of 2020 until December 2020, when FireEye found it, the attackers, probably the Russians, the attackers ran rampant inside the most influential networks in the whole world. Just let that sink in for a minute. And especially about internet service providers. So an attacker is inside an ISP's internal network, and now that attacker can pollute set-top boxes or maybe internet routers, or maybe you're listening to this recording across the internet right now, that you're using an internet service provider. Maybe an attacker can listen in on some of your internet meetings and where you're talking about sensitive stuff, and that the attacker can record that, play it back for later analysis and what have you. There's no end to what an attacker could do if they're listening in on all your conversations across the internet. This is the big one. This is the attack we've feared for the last 20 years. Great. I'm not big enough for anyone to attack. I don't do national security for a living. Well, you kind of are. There's a couple things. You can be an attack target yourself for some of the ransomware that we've already talked about, or you can be a drone in an attack against someone else. And I'm going to share a personal example about that in a minute. You are big enough for someone to attack, but don't just take my word for it, because my word isn't worth the disk space to hold what I'm saying right here. I like this magazine called IT Governance. IT Governance, at the beginning of every month, IT Governance publishes a list of all the cyber attacks from last month that's made the news. So I'm showing you the list from November of 2020 because December, as at the time of this recording, December's not over yet. So in November 2020. And when we count through the number, I think you're going to see 108 attacks, but I'm going to show you. And 587 million records breached in November 2020. 1 month. Check this out. Here's 10 cyber attacks from November that made the news. Here's 10 more. And here's 10 more. That's 30. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 37. 37 so far. And we're just getting started here. Here's 10 more. Oh crud, I hit the sorry about that. I opened a link to one of the attacks. These are all real links to real stories. So there's 10 more. I think we're up to 47, 57, 67, 77, 87, lost count, 97 maybe. That's 100. That should be 101 right there about financial information. 100, 200, 304 insider stuff, and then some other news. That adds up to 108. 108 cyber attacks. And if you want any of these links, just contact me. I'll be happy to send them all to you, and you can read the details at your leisure. 108 cyber attack stories from November 2020. Do the arithmetic. There's 30 days in November. That's almost 4 per day on average. And here's where it gets personal. I'm going to share a few personal stories with you. First up is a ransomware attack I was part of in 2014, right as I was putting Bullseye Breach through its publishing cycle. This is a picture of my mother, where my mother-in-law lived in Indiana, and I built her a deck. This is a construction picture in progress. That's a nice looking deck, if I do say so myself. So I was neck deep in sawdust, and my phone rang, and it was my customer up in Minneapolis, and he was telling me about a letter that looked like this. That was all copies of this document were all over his server, and essentially it says, "We've scrambled all your files. Don't try to ever find us because you won't be able to. If you want your files unscrambled, send us some money to this Bitcoin address, and here's instructions for how to send us money." Well, long story short, nobody sent anybody any extortion money on my watch. Good backups saved the day, and I've got some more about good backups coming up later. We recovered. My customer ended up being down for a day, and so it could have been a disaster turned into an inconvenience. I'll tell you more about that later. Well, no more about tactics later. That was a customer. I'm a personal victim myself. In 2011, somebody tried to steal a lot of money from one of my credit cards. And I'm going to call out US Bank by name and Kim from the fraud department. They did everything right. They were super duper duper helpful. US Bank won a customer for life with what they did for me. We spent more than an hour on the phone chasing down every single fraudulent transaction. We even talked to store clerks who waited on the people who tried to steal stuff. Back in the days when there were physical credit cards and people went to real stores to buy stuff, that seems like ancient history now. So I packaged all that information up, names, dates, transaction IDs, people, all that, details, and I sent it to the FBI, and that was right around December 2011, and now it's the end of December 2020. I still haven't heard back from the FBI. It's a good thing I didn't hold my breath. In 2008, the Norm Coleman for Senate campaign, that was the closest U.S. Senate election in history, and Coleman lost. But part of what he did was try to make his website look really busy, and he moved his website to a different hosting provider. And he left a spreadsheet on his website that had details about donor information, including credit card numbers in some cases. The spreadsheet was on the public website, wide open to the whole world, and visible to the whole world. And so, people downloaded it, and a few people became credit card fraud victims. I found out about it because my name and email address was in there, but not any credit card numbers. I didn't donate to anybody's campaign. And WikiLeaks sent me an email that said, "Hey, Greg, your email address is in this bundle of stuff. Take appropriate steps to protect yourself." I'm grateful to WikiLeaks for that still to this day. This is the same WikiLeaks that ended up spilling Hillary Clinton and Democratic emails all over the world in 2016. This happened to me in 2009. I've got a link to a blog post where I've got details about that Norm Coleman incident. I was there, up close and personal. In November 2000, going back farther, I still, to this day, I am a grab on the belly do-it-yourselfer, and I taught myself how to build and operate a DNS server, and I did it wrong. I made some mistakes, and somebody compromised my DNS server, and I found myself part of an attack against the government of the country of Brazil. Remember earlier when I said you can either be a victim or you can be part of the path to another juicier target? I was part of the path to a juicier target because I made a bunch of configuration mistakes. I ended up calling the FBI about that one because people told me, you need to report this stuff. The FBI didn't know what the internet was in those days. I had to explain. I imagine by now in 2020, the FBI really does know what the internet is. The FBI and I, we go way back. We go way back, and I've got a blog post about the FBI and bureaucracy and me. The conclusion is law enforcement's not going to help you if you find yourself a victim of this stuff. So you better learn how to take care of yourself because no one's going to do it for you. Big question. How do bad guys plunder good guys seemingly at will? How does that work? And why do business leaders and politicians keep hiding behind the same weenie excuses all the time? Well, let's look at how first. How do bad guys win? Bad guys win by collaborating. And I'm going to show you a good guy winning here in just a second. Bad guys win by collaborating. This is a website called deep.web.com, and this screenshot's is 2 or 3 years old by now. And so this is a directory of any any illegal or underground or immoral service you want to find, here's the directory where you go to find it, and to find these dark web services. If I want to buy illegal drugs, or I want to search for a 0-day to attack somebody, or maybe I want to steal a credit card number or a social security number, I go here to find someone to sell it to me. It's a nice directory. Now, the good guys happen to collaborate on this one, and I'm going to show you this. Let's go right here. And let me show you this right now, www.deepdotweb.com, and check it out. This site has been seized. That's the FBI and other law enforcement agencies bragging. They seized that domain name. International agencies collaborated, and they took down deep.web, and they seized the domain name for themselves. So that's an applause line. The good guys collaborated and they won. But what did the bad guys do? The bad guys adapted. That's how bad guys win. The bad guys adapted. Deep.web was gone, and so they made another one called deeponionweb.com. You play on words in the name of Tor, the onion router. So now here's a new directory of all the illicit stuff I might want to find. Go to deeponionweb.com and then just find it. Bad guys adapt. That's how they win. They collaborate and they adapt. How do good guys lose? Well, there's a whole lot of ways good guys lose. One biggie is with certificate authority trust failures. What's a certificate authority? Let's say Alice wants to visit Bob's website. But Alice doesn't know whether or not Bob really is Bob. And so Alice needs a way to figure that out. Well, Alice trusts Charlie, and Bob trusts Charlie. Charlie takes on a unique role called a certificate authority. So Charlie gives Bob a certificate, and he signs it. And the certificate says, I, Charlie, attest that you, Bob, really are Bob, signed Charlie. And everybody knows what Charlie's signature looks like. So when Alice visits Bob's website, Bob gives Alice that certificate from Charlie, and Alice says, okay, I see Charlie signed it. Okay, Bob, I trust you. I know you're good. That's the trust model. That's how it works. That's how it works. Forget technology. That's how it works. Now, what happens if Charlie proves himself not trustworthy? Well, then the whole model falls apart. And that's what happened here with Symantec and other certificate authorities. I picked on Symantec, but there's been other similar failures. Somebody stole thousands of certificates from Symantec and used those certificates to sign bad pieces of software. And so the browser vendors forced Symantec to sell their security operations. They gave an ultimatum to Symantec as of whatever date it was, and I don't remember the date. We're not gonna trust your certificates anymore. So trust is a big deal. And when trust fails, but good guys lose. Institutional failures are another big deal. The United States Office of Personnel Management, OPM. Think of the U.S. government Human Resources Department. In 2015, they allowed the Chinese to steal personal information about every single U.S. government employee that there was, every single one, and everybody who applied for a security clearance. If you applied for a security clearance sometime before 2015, the Chinese know everything you put in your forms. And so let's say that you shared Bibles with people in China where it's officially atheist and Bibles are illegal, but you shared Bibles. People could die because you told the U.S. government what you did over in China. That's a big deal. Willful ignorance is another big deal. I'm going to pick on John Podesta. John Podesta was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager in the 2016 election, and Podesta was also President Clinton's chief of staff. You'd think that a presidential chief of staff would know every con artist trick in the book. You'd think so, right? Well, Podesta came home one night and he opened up his Gmail and he saw an email claiming to come from Google that said his Gmail password had been compromised. Click here to fix it all. So he clicked here and he gave away his email password to the Russians. That was one step in the chain of events that spilled embarrassing emails from Democrats all across WikiLeaks. John Podesta helped with that. He wanted the FBI to investigate. John, I'm here to tell you, the FBI doesn't need to investigate. You fell for the oldest trick in the book. By the way, so did Colin Powell, General Colin Powell, Republican, former Secretary of State. Colin Powell fell for the same trick apparently. So did others. And then I'll put a picture of Norm Coleman, Republican, up here. This is not will be an equal opportunity basher. I told you about the 2008 election, and the cybersecurity stuff. This is not a blue thing or a red thing or a Republican thing or a Democratic thing. It's a quality thing. We need to up our quality because we're the ones making the dumb mistakes that bad guys are glomming onto. Stolen government attack tactics are another biggie. The National Security Agency, what a surprise. The National Security Agency developed a bunch of attack tactics against our enemies. And guess what? Bad guys got into the NSA and they stole some of those attack tactics. And remember that 2017 supply chain attack I told you about, NotPetya? Part of that attack was a 0-day that the NSA uncovered. And the bad guys used that attack tactic against the good guys. How's that for fun? Right from our own National Security Agency. And then asleep at the switch. There's no sugarcoating this. I told you about the SolarWinds attack. The SolarWinds people that should know better were asleep at the switch, and somebody took advantage of them. SolarWinds might not survive, and might not deserve to survive after an error like that. There's no excuse for it. I've got a blog post about this down at the bottom there on the slide. Let's recap. What are we up against? Bad guys have a huge underground supply chain and support network. You don't have to, if you want to attack somebody, you don't have to build anything. Just go buy it. There's plenty of people on the dark web willing to sell you whatever you want, from stolen social security numbers to attack tactics to 0 days, just you name it, you can buy it. You can buy it on the dark web. The entities we're supposed to trust, they've all been violated. I picked on a few, but they've all been violated. They all have. And personal information about pretty much all of us is up for sale on underground websites. Everybody's been compromised, including the U.S. government that's also a perpetrator and a victim. Read about Stuxnet, Stuxnet, from a book by an author named Kim Zetter, Zetter. That's the book. The title of the book is Countdown to 0 Day. It's a great story about the Israelis and the NSA will never own up to this, but it's a great story about how the Israelis and the NSA did not produce a cyber attack against the Iranians to slow down their nuclear centrifuges. We didn't do that. Somebody else did. And you know who found it? Private antivirus companies. The private sector found this stuff. When you hear the stories about only the government monitoring cybersecurity, that's hogwash. Private companies found Stuxnet and chased it to its logical conclusion. If your identity is stolen, by the way, speaking of government, there's nobody from law enforcement that's going to help you. You're on your own. So you better learn to deal with it. And that's just the way it is. So maybe what we should do is we should just give up. Let's just roll over and accept that we're going to be slaves to bad guys forever. Here's how we do it. Go buy a cave in Montana and just hide. Hide inside that cave. Pay with cash because your credit cards are no good anymore. Bad guys have unlimited time and creativity. You don't. So let's just give up. Does that make you mad? It should. Sticking with my Star Trek pictures, it ought to make you mad enough to chew neutronium. Because we need to win. I don't need to explain why we need to win, I hope. We need to win. It's really, really bad if we're slaves to attackers all the time. So that we don't need to accept that. We cannot accept that. We need to win. So here's a winning strategy. I'm going to tell you about a few layers of defense, and I'm going to fly through this stuff at warp speed. Speaking of Star Trek, I'm going to fly through this stuff at warp speed. At the end, I'm going to show you how you can get copies of all of it and study it at your leisure. So let's just fly through this. Buckle up. We're going to go fast. First up is email hygiene. We all know about email hygiene. Don't open attachments. Don't fall for phishing scams. Everyone's seen a letter like this. Your account has been hacked, and send me money, or else I'm going to show everybody all your personal private secrets. Blah 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 blah. I have down at the bottom here, at the bottom of the slide, go to my website, go to dgregscott.com, and go to my blog and go to fishy emails, and I've got email samples with snarky comments about some of them, and I'm gonna keep growing that as the good ones and the really bad ones come in. So keep an eye on that. Don't fall for phishing. Patching is a big deal. Patching is super important. I've given you horror stories about patching gone bad with the NotPetya attack and the SolarWinds attack. Despite those horror stories, I still want you to keep your devices updated. There is no such thing as bug-free software. Every non-trivial piece of software has bugs, and the way vendors fix bugs is they come out with patches and updates. And that means you have to apply the patches and updates when they come out, because attackers prey on that stuff. Attackers prey on unpatched software, and there's horror story after horror story about that as well. So patch your stuff. We need ways to make sure that the patches we get are trustworthy, and I've got some more comments coming up on that later. But for right now, patch your phones, patch your tablets, patch your computers, your servers. Keep that stuff updated. Apply your updates. I cannot emphasize that strongly enough. Authentication is a biggie. It's easy if you and I are talking face to face. We know we can kind of recognize the other person. But across the internet, it's a different story. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to give you a tip here that's not in any books. My half-brother David, we share the same father, have different mothers. And one day I got this funny-looking email from David that didn't feel right, and I decided I needed to figure out if David really was David. So I replied back and I said, "Well, hey David, I need to ask you a question that only the two of us should know." Now remember, we have the same father, different mothers. So I said, "David, what's our mother's maiden name?" That was the question I asked him. His response was, "That was good, Greg. Very clever. We share the same father, and his name is Doug, and we have different mothers." Now I knew David was David. The trick here is ask a bogus question. Ask a question that the other party will recognize as a bogus question, and the answer is this is a bogus question. And use your creativity. And that's a good tactic to make sure the other person really is who they say they are. Trust is a biggie. We touched on that a little bit when I told you about the semantic failure. Learn how trust on the internet works. I've got a presentation about that and a link to it at the bottom of the slide here. And I want to thank my grandsons for demonstrating trust barefoot on my deck a couple years ago. Passwords. We all love to hate passwords. Passwords are the worst cybersecurity thing ever, except we haven't found anything better. So maybe next year we'll find something better. We've been saying that since there's been passwords. Maybe this time we mean it. Here's a little bit about password hygiene. A lot of the literature says we need to use complex random passwords with random characters, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers. So here's an example. Complex random passwords are good because they're hard to guess. Complex random passwords are bad because they're hard to remember. So getting around hard to remember, the conventional wisdom says use a tool called a password manager. You store all your stuff, you store your passwords inside this password manager. Then when you need one, you go get it and look them up. The problem with that is password managers are a juicy target, and the other problem is that it's a hassle to go look up your passwords inside of a password manager every time. So I like passphrases instead of passwords. Passphrases are good because they're hard to guess. Passphrases are also good because they're easy to remember. And you can use special characters and numbers in upper and lowercase with passphrases, just like passwords, to give it that bigger alphabet. The more spaces you have for characters, the more possibilities a brute force attack needs. And so I've got a presentation breaking all that down, and here's a link to it at the bottom of the slide. And I'll encourage you to go dig deeper with that presentation. Backups are a biggie. Now here's what separates good backups from not good backups. The best backups, in order to defend against the scrambling type of ransomware attack, make sure that the systems you're backing up don't have any way to access those backups on their own. That takes a little bit of planning. Here's the reasoning. If malicious software gets inside one of your systems, that malicious software knows how to find everything that system knows how to find. Just stands to reason, right? If that system knows how to find its backups, then the malicious software inside that system also knows how to find its backups. Doesn't matter if it's on the cloud or a USB stick or on the other side of the world someplace, doesn't matter. If that system can find the backups, so can malicious software inside that system. Read up about the Tewksbury, Massachusetts Police Department. They were a ransomware victim years ago, and they ended up having to pay money to their attackers. Check that out. Listen to that again. A police department had to pay money to criminals to get their decryption key, to get their systems back up and running again, because they had their backups on a USB hard drive attached to the same computer, and the malicious software destroyed the backups along with the software that it destroyed. So they had to pay money to criminals. They had to put money in criminals' pockets. A police department. I imagine some people were properly embarrassed about that. The only thing I want to say about mobility is be careful where you get your software. Why does a flashlight application need access to your contacts and your camera and your microphone? Why would a flashlight application need access to that? So use your common sense on that. Only install apps from trusted sources. The Google Play Store maybe, or the Apple Store, or the Microsoft Store. At least the stuff that goes in there is vetted a little bit. So be careful about what you install on your mobile devices, because you carry those with you all the time, and they can spy on you. And there's been documented cases of that. Tech tools are a big deal. Tech tools are things like antivirus subscriptions and inbound email filtering, or the firewall I showed you a little while ago that logs stuff. All those tech tools are valuable, but they're not a panacea. There is no substitute for good old-fashioned human awareness. And so always, always, always stay vigilant. We have to stay vigilant. It's not up to the NSA or the FBI or the CIA or the Department of Homeland Security to keep us safe. It's up to us to keep ourselves safe. If you want to find the person most responsible in the whole world for cybersecurity, just hold up a mirror and look inside. You'll see the most powerful person in the world. And then social media. That leads to social media and disinformation campaigns. And that's part of why I'm recording this at the end of December 2020. We just finished. Well, it's not finished. It's not over yet. We're in the aftermath of one of the most bizarre election seasons we've ever had in the history of the United States. Whether you're a Trump fan or a Biden fan is irrelevant for this discussion. What is relevant is both sides are pointing fingers at the other side about spreading disinformation over social media. And the social media companies don't help. The social media companies are in some cases disabling people's accounts, in other cases not showing certain posts on certain points of view in their search results, which triggers even more suspicion and bad stuff. I'm a personal victim of social media disinformation on a smaller scale from a couple years ago, when somebody tried to attack my grandson for playing in a park in a costume. I've got a blog post about that too. There is no technology right now to guard against disinformation campaigns. It all goes back to awareness and vigilance. Follow those rumors if you care. Take those rumors with a grain of salt. Use your appropriate skepticism. Follow them back to their sources. be careful about what you post and what you forward on social media. We can zip. There's academic studies that back this up. Lies and rumors fly around social media way faster and way farther than the truth. And there's plenty of academic studies to back it up. Just go look it up on the internet. I have some links to it in that blog post on the bottom of the slide there. This is the cutting edge of cybersecurity right here. I'll have more to say about disinformation later, I'm sure, as we dig deeper into it. We're getting to the crux of it. I don't have time for this. Just tell me what I need to know in 25 words or less. I was talking to an organization leader one time, and that's what he told me. He said, Greg, how do I keep myself safe? And so I started into all the stuff, and he stopped me in mid-sentence, and that's what he said. And other people laughed. I went away mad. But I have it. I have it. If you're a busy organization leader, here's everything you need to know about cybersecurity. It's all crammed into this really dumb rhyme. Here it is. Care and share to be prepared. Now you're watching a recording of this and there's nobody in the room next to you. So just repeat this after me and burn it into your brain. Care and share to be prepared. That's the dumbest rhyme in the whole world, but everything that I've already told you and everything that I'm going to tell you, it's all crammed into those 6 words. So we beat 25 words by 19 words by my Minnesota math. Everything flows from that. Care enough to actually really do something about it instead of just talking about it. This is a picture of Kathleen Archuleta. Kathleen Archuleta ran the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. She was in charge when it came to light that they'd given away all this information to the Chinese over the past several years. She was in charge. She had to resign in disgrace. Equifax, the CEO, and a whole lot of top managers at Equifax, they had to resign in disgrace. Target, the CEO at Target had to resign after they lost all those credit card numbers to attackers. There's a whole big long list of shame that where these kinds of attacks have cost top people their jobs. Not to mention the millions and millions and millions of people who are real victims of this stuff. So care enough to pay more than lip service, or enjoy the consequences of the next incident. There's my blunt warning. Care and share. Now this sharing is counterintuitive, but sharing is the key. Sharing is the key to winning. So here's Alfred Charles Hobbs. Alfred Charles Hobbs in 1853, and that's not a typo, 1853, published a book about how mechanical locks worked. If Hobbs were alive today, he'd be an internet security researcher. But in his day, mechanical locks were the security big black box mystery. So he published a book and turned that black box into not common knowledge. And he caught a ration of grief for it. People said, Charles, and I'll use 2020 language, I'll use today's language instead of 1853 language. A lot of people said, hey, Chuck, you published this book. You just gave the bad guys information they can use to kill us. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy in the head or what? And he replied, you guys are nuts. You guys are the ones who are nuts. The lockpickers and bad guys, they already know how to plunder us. When I published this book, all I did was level the playing field. Now the good guys know what they need to know as well. And that argument holds true today. Bad guys spend all day probing us. They spend all night collaborating with each other to make tomorrow's probes better. Good guys, we isolate ourselves. We don't share. We don't talk to each other. And so we keep falling victim to the same mistakes. We keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. We fix that problem by collaborating and by sharing. And so you share everything you do for security. Present it at forums, talk about it at conferences, publish it, tell your friends, share it widely, and demand everybody else share what they do widely. We win by sharing. Adopt open, then we win, then we level the playing field. We need to learn to share as well as the bad guys do. I've got a whole presentation where I develop that more. The link's at the bottom of the slide there. My radical, not so new idea to stop the daily daily barrage of data breaches. I'll encourage you to just go watch that presentation. So which do you prefer? Do you prefer being embarrassed in a peer review because somebody finds a huge hole in your security? Or would you rather be embarrassed in front of the whole world after somebody steals from you? Which do you like better? I know which one I like better. And I put my money where my mouth is, by the way. I practice what I preach. I had a friend a few years ago try to probe my website, and I was real cocky. I thought, I'm a security pro. No one's going to penetrate my stuff. It took him about 15 minutes to find a gaping hole in a security mistake that I made. It took him about 15 minutes, and he barbecued me for it, as he should have. I had it coming. So I published the whole story. It's right there in that blog post on my website. 2 great books. I told you about Bullseye Breach. Virus Bomb takes it up a notch. In Virus Bomb, Jerry Barkley finds a system compromised with malware, and he chases a little farther and a little deeper, and he finds that's part of this. It's part of a huge ongoing cyber attack from a hostile nation state. And that hostile nation's using that cyber attack to gather data for a really, really, really nasty biological attack they plan to launch shortly. And if Jerry doesn't act, millions of people will die. It's a great story. You'll love it. And a warning, don't start reading until a Friday, because then you have all weekend to recover from the jet lag, because you won't be able to put it down once you get started with it. So you have been warned. So, and do me a favor too, if you read Bullseye Breach, post a glowing review on Amazon about how much you loved it, because authors just, we eat that stuff up. That helps our self-esteem. So I'll thank you in advance for that. Security is a process, not an event. Share what you learn with other good guys, and then refine what you do, and then share it again, and keep doing that. This stuff is an arms race. You don't just go put security in and then forget about it. It's a process, not an event. The bad guys continuously improve what they do. We need to continuously improve what we do. Demand other good guys share what they learn. And that's how we win. Remember I said I had comments about about software updates and trusting software updates? This is how we do it. We demand that any of our software providers share with us what they do to keep their environment safe. We demand that they share it, and that way we can all examine it for ourselves and make smart decisions on whether or not we're going to trust them. That's how you do it, by reputation. Security is a process, not an event. Resistance is not futile, no matter what anybody tells you. We can win. That lady back at the Barnes & Noble store, I'm still just as passionate as I was then. We can win if we decide we want to bad enough. And yes, con games are alive and well today on the internet. We see lots of them all the time. I have some satire about that. Here's a link. Just go to my website, go to dgregscott.com, and search for Greg-5G-1. And apologies in advance to Jonathan Swift for that one. One more plug. We'll stop the slides for a second. I told you you could get all those tactical tips in your inbox. Here's how. Just go visit my website. Go to dgregscott.com. Go visit my website and click right here on the big red button. Click the big red button and tell me your name and your email address, and I'll send you all those tips, and then you'll have stuff you can look at your leisure as you need, because we had to fly through it, and we had to fly through it way too fast. And so, one last slide. Here's how to contact me. Greg Scott at infrasupport.com or Greg Scott at dgregscott.com. Either one of those goes to the same place. I keep the InfraSupport around because that was the name of my company before. There's my website, www.dgregscott.com. D as in Daniel, dgregscott.com. And here's how to get a hold of me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, all the different social media platforms. You'll find me there. Look for Greg Scott Public Videos, and that's where I'll keep the video. That's where I'll keep this video. And you can find me on my author page on Facebook, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm in Twitter all the time too. And so that is the end of the slideshow. Let's go back here, and let's go back here. And I want to thank you for putting up with me for all this time. If you like what you heard or you have questions, anything like that, leave those in the comments or contact me through one of the places I showed how to contact me, and we'll talk about it. And thank you for putting up with me. I'm going to stop recording right now.